there are still some fabulous politicians within the Liberal Party who hold true to conservative values, and we are fortunate enough to have one of them with us this evening. He is a South Australian federal senator. He runs a podcast called Based, and he is not afraid to tackle the left head-on in the culture war. The Liberals are very, very lucky to have him, and so are we. Welcome to Kaleidoscope, Senator Alex Antic.
Daisy, thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure, and I'm looking forward to being a bit kaleidoscopic, so great to be here.
Well, it's fantastic to have you. So thrilled that we can have this chat. You know, you are definitely one of my favourite Senator, for a number of reasons, and I'd love to have a chat to you about the start of your political journey. And look, before you embarked on this life, you had a successful career as a lawyer for a long time. So what inspired you to give all of that up and go into politics?
Yeah, it's a great question, actually. Politics is a little bit like a Death Star. It's kind of got an orbit that drags you in with its, traction beam sometimes. And the more you set foot in that world, the more you become compelled to, to sort of continue on into it. I'd had a sort of a childhood that was, pretty openly discussing politics. We would talk about it a lot. I mean, I think a lot of it was just sort of in general terms, how the world works and that sort of stuff. And my dad's side of the family fled from the communists in the former Yugoslavia, which I've sort of told a few times over the years. But essentially, my grandma was a small business lady who was a very strong lady, actually, in a very difficult time, and decided to take the family and move. It was really her doing that did it. And
wow.
So that background, I think, framed a lot of what I grew up with, and certainly that that centre-right approach to politics. I think a lot of people from Eastern Europe or with roots in Eastern Europe have a similar story to tell. I guess a lot of people left because of the communists, and so that sort of framed my upbringing. And I was always a person that followed the Liberal Party and the fortunes of the Liberal Party, and then I've always voted Liberal. And I've even got a photo of me as an 11-year-old at the Wax museum somewhere. I think it was actually in London. I was lucky enough to go over there on a trip with Mum and Dad. And there's a photo of me sort of growling at Bob Hawke in about 1984, which sort of shows how far back this all goes. It was sort of in the DNA, I guess. So, but I mean, and there are probably, we've said it a few times, too many lawyers in politics, but there is also a natural, predication to going into politics when you're dealing with laws every day. And it sort of developed from there. A friend of mine who's now the member for Barker, Tony Paston MP, is a great friend of mine, really introduced me to party politics. And before you know it, one foot's in front of the other, and here you are, you're sitting in an office in Canberra. And I think the overarching thing, Daisy, is, as I said, the more you get drawn into politics, the more you realise there are things that those of us who see the world we do need to say. And there's a big fight ahead of us. So I'm well and truly in the holding bay of the Death Star now, I can tell you. I'm sitting right in it.
Well, yes, you are certainly this week. You're down in Canberra where Parliament is sitting. And look, I agree with you. I think there must be a natural inclination for lawyers to go into politics, because if you're a lawyer and you're dealing with laws all the time, well, some of the laws kind of suck. And I guess it must be a little bit frustrating. You might want to change them. And look, before you were a federal senator, you actually served on the Adelaide City Council from 2014 to 18. That's a good long stint on council. Councils are so notoriously full of leftists. Did you have to fight for sheer common sense while you were there?
Yeah, it was a good journey, actually. I mean, I look back on it now knowing that it was a great introduction to the world of politics, and I'd really encourage anyone, particularly Conservatives, to do that. First of all, because we need their voice inside local government. So much politics, I think, is the green shoots of some of these movements start at local government. We see these virtue statements that come out of councils with, various statements on identity politics or climate change or whatever it might be. But it was a great learning curve for me. Lessons I learned in that time were probably distilled into a couple of things. The left play harder when it comes to politics. They're active, and that's been part of the problem in the West generally, I think, is that the left turn up to play and they don't give up. They fight every battle and they're there. These in South Australia in particular, these elections are non-compulsory and in fact even non-party affiliated. So People are required to declare if they are members of parties, but generally speaking, a lot of people will run as kind of independent candidates when they're actually pretty far left in many cases. And so it was a great lesson in the early stages of, how the chamber works. And I think probably the most important lesson for me was the power in the administrative arm of any form of government, be it a statutory body like local governments or be it here in Canberra, how much of the work gets left to bureaucrats and how much power they've got in leading sometimes otherwise, well-intentioned elected members along a journey towards the outcome that they want themselves. I saw that time and time again. Often it was for good reasons, but often it was for, reasons of, a particular project that wanted to be made. And we had a whole lot of stuff that would just require a fight. That's why we need people in there. We had $500,000 being spent on a rainbow path in one of the public areas in the middle of the city, which, of course, these are public monies being spent on political statements, in my view.
Yes, exactly.
We had a lot of spending and waste issues, which are probably the main one. The left love to spend money. They at one point tried to spend, I think, $700,000 on a two-room toilet block. Things like this that just need the attention of fiscal and social conservatives. So please, anyone that's watching and thinking about a run in local government, please do it. We need you.
I second that. Any Conservative out there who's thinking of going into local government, I mean, look at the City of Sydney Council with their motion to, change all the plaques on the historic statues, and that's just a taste of it. So I really commend you for going in there and fighting those battles. And the thing is, the battles never end. They're ongoing, and you recently actually fought quite a public battle for something that really was not your fault, for lack of a better term. A couple of weeks ago, you won the #1 spot on the South Australian Senate ticket. Big congratulations, very well deserved. But it caused a bit of a furor because you pipped Lady Senator Anne Ruston, very senior Liberal woman, for the top spot. But this, in the eyes of not just the left media, but certain more moderate Liberals, for some reason, Alex, made you public enemy #1, even though you'd fairly won the pre-election. So my question to you is, why do these people seem to hate meritocracy and indeed democracy so much?
Well, I mean, I think it's from the lefty media point of view, it's a pretty easy narrative. I mean, what they sort of failed to just sort of disclose every time, not disclose, but failed to say every time, was that #2 position is winnable. I mean, more than winnable, it's almost guaranteed in the Senate, and that therefore means that I think 1 and 2 are absolutely certain to come back. So it's not like anyone's been knocked off per se. I mean, and at the end of the day, these are matters for our party, for state council delegates, as it works in the Liberal Party, and it's a great honour. I mean, it's hard to know what to say other than I ran a race for top spot. I did it because you should always run for top spot, I think, in the world. There's no point in running for second or third. And I was, fortunate enough to be honoured to get that position. And, we actually had another very good Conservative woman by the name of Leah Blythe, who's our Liberal Women's Council president, who's been outstanding on a whole range of issues internally in the party that I think one day will make a very good parliamentarian, and I hope she does one day. But she missed out and ended up in 4th position. So, and David Fawcett was returned in 3, and David's a very good man as well. So, this issue about gender, I just switch it off, and I don't talk about it. I don't deal with it unless it's raised, because ultimately this is an issue of the left. Yes. This is identity politics, and it's a grievance narrative ultimately. And I don't intend to indulge it. I just think. If we're going to say we're a party of merit, we can't drift into the lane of the left and continue to countenance these identity politics narratives. They're just not helpful. And I don't think, Tom, for anything else, I don't think there actually is a women problem in the Liberal Party. In South Australia in particular, 3 of the last 4 legislative council spots have actually gone to women on merit. And I have to remind myself of that fact because I don't see it through the lens of gender. I just see them as being 3 excellent people.
Yes.
So, I mean, lefty media will lefty media. Let them do what they want. I don't actually care. I don't really read it. But it's an opportunity occasionally to pick one of these, newspapers up and read them, because I don't read them any other time. So you've got to wait till your own name's in there, Daisy, before you start reading that stuff.
So you make an exceedingly good point. And but look, I have to ask, Alex, it would seem a no-brainer for the Liberal Party to avoid that grievance left-wing narrative of, gender divisions. Why are there seemingly so many Liberal politicians who still indulge that gender narrative?
That's a great question. We just shouldn't be doing that. And I mean, it's people, one of the things we do say in the party is people can have a bit of latitude to have their own views. And of course, the famous John Howard statement of the broad church, and that's all fine. But I don't see it. I mean, I don't see it as being something that fits our, our we believe statement. I don't see this as being particularly relevant to what we do. We stand for freedom of speech, individual thought, small business, all these sorts of things. And I don't see anywhere in there gender politics. So it's up to the individual as to whether or not they take these causes and concerns on. But, in the same way that I oppose net zero in the case of the party, and I just do it, they would probably say, well, why do you do that when the party's not? So everyone's got their own way of approaching it. But, I consider myself to be a, part, I don't know what I consider myself to be anymore. It's sort of the term conservative doesn't seem to do it anymore. It's interesting, but I'm a centre-right, libertarian, conservative nationalist. That's probably going to get me in trouble, but here we are. Titles are very hard to find.
Well, you're very, very welcome to be a centre-right libertarian conservative nationalist on AEDT TV. We're very happy to have people of any and all views on. We love it. And look, what kind of, we know, there were politicians and media who degraded you for that pre-selection result, but did you receive support from other politicians? What kind of support did you receive?
Yeah, of course. I mean, everybody, I think, understands what pre-selection battles are like, and they're difficult internal matters for a little period of time. There's always a bit of dust and cloud, they're like one of those cartoons sometimes with a ball and the arms and legs coming out. It seems like that. They're not actually like that. There's just, I'm just joking, but that's the impression I get. The media love it. The reality is everyone gets back on with the job and it's all fine. But I mean, yeah, of course, a lot. I mean, there's been a lot of congratulations. I mean, a great friend of mine, Matt Canavan, posted something the other week where he sort of said the same thing. He said, look, why are we talking about this? Is not our lane. Let's not talk about gender. Let's just talk about merit. And, I think there's been a lot of that around as well. Those are not interesting stories, though, of course, none of us promote them, and none of us really like talking about internal politics. People are sick of it, I think, ultimately. One of my great grievances in politics is how much people in the real world actually care about the things that go on in here. And if they don't care about what's going on in this building, then they certainly don't care what's going on at party level. It's just the obsession of the left stream media. I think people are more worried about, their back pocket and what their kids are being taught at school and, geopolitical issues and all those sorts of things than really what happens on any given day at a Liberal Party state council.
I think you are exactly right. I think it shows the privilege of a lot of left-stream media. I like that, left-stream media journalists, that this is the issue that they chose to focus on when there are so many other things affecting Australians, right to the core at the moment. Yeah. This is fantastic discussion, Senator Alex Antic, and viewers at home, please do not go anywhere.